Welcome to this week's episode of Sexually Speaking with Keisha Clark and Rhonda Burns. Today, Rhonda Burns is traveling, being the fabulous jet-setter goddess that she is. And I have the absolute fabulous pleasure and delight of talking to a special guest who I will tell you about in just a moment. If you're first joining us, and if it's your first time to join us, thank you, first of all. And how does it get more fun, awesome, yummy, and delicious than this? We are all about celebrating all things sex and the sex of everything. This is about having unconventional conversations to unfuck your life here on Sexually Speaking. So it's a different perspective. It's a slightly different approach. We are talking about the inclusion of physical behaviors with regards to sex. We're also talking about all the other energies that sex is and can be that maybe none of us or very few of us were ever invited to explore, much less talk about when we were growing up. So if you are in the live show right now, if you roll your cursor across the screen, you will have a little bar that comes up at the bottom of your screen. You can actually submit a question via the chat feature or the question and answer feature, which is the Q&A. You can send your question to either one of myself or our special guest, and you can also send a private question to anyone else who's in the chat if you just scroll down and find their name once you click on the chat icon. So the replay will be available within 24 hours. If you've somehow found this video and you are not already on the guest list, we would love to see you on the guest list. So all you have to do is look for the link in the description or in the text below this video, click on it, put your name on the list, and what that means is you will get your link to join us live every week, and you will get a replay link sent directly to you, and you will also see a few occasional special offers from myself and Rhonda to play with even more possibilities of sex. So, and what that could be, and what that could create. So without further ado, this week we have the pleasure of Miss Beautiful, Amazing Unicorn Whisperer, Cory Michelle Johnson. Hello, Cory.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. We're talking about sex and desire, and I threw in on one of my promos, business.
Awesome. I love that. Yes. And that it's the whole package. It's the whole deal. Yeah. So if you have never met Cory Michelle, you definitely want to learn where to find her and how to play more with her. And that, in my interesting point of view, Cory Michelle is a fantastic facilitator of unicorn awesomeness. That's my designated title I'm giving her today. I have played with Cory off and on for the last few years, and for me, Cory is an invitation to letting go of the things that lock you up, and she has this really special kind of capacity of kind of this radar feature. I don't know, you might have a different word for it, Cory, but it's kind of a radar for detecting where people are fooling themselves, where people are holding on to the lies, where people are kind of invested in what isn't working. And what Cory has is some amazing magic that she uses and shares. And it just allows people to see what isn't working with a totally different and fresh perspective, and then have the space to choose something that might actually work for them, myself included. I've been in the hot seat with Cory. And I will say that you might sweat quite a bit, and it's worth every drop. So, and I think we've also had some titles about you, the Unicorn Whisperer. Cory actually created a Facebook group, Crazy Possible Experiment, and we're on week 48. Are we in that one?
46.
46. Oh my gosh. Each week, Cory is delivering a tool for us to play with. And I think the group went in something like, 3 or 4 weeks to over 11,000 members. So it's just a crazy, possible, awesome experiment. And it's really about empowering people to use tools to develop their muscles of asking questions and really being present and applying this funny thing we call consciousness to their lives in the way that works for them. And I think it's fantastic. It's a lot of fun. If you haven't found that group already, you can actually find it on Facebook. It's facebook.com Crazy Possible Experiment. Is it right? Is it, Cory?
Yep, just search Crazy Possible Experiment. You'll find
it. Awesome. And just a little technical thing. I'm not hearing you very well. It almost sounds like your volume is low. So do you have earbuds or anything you can put in?
Ooh.
We'll have a moment of technical adjustment here, folks.
Yes.
Awesome. So while Cory is putting her earbuds in, so just to tell you a few things, normally if you're joining us for the first time, normally I get to drive this jet plane, so to speak, or this machine with my co-host Rhonda Burns and myself. I'm Keisha Clark, in case you didn't know who I was to begin with. And each week you can play with us here on Tuesdays on Sexually Speaking, or you can catch the replays again if you're on the guest list. If Tuesdays doesn't work for you, if you have questions or anything you want to submit, we would love to know about it, and we would love to create topics that you want to hear us talk about, or that you might like to join us and talk about. So Cory's back and she's got earbuds. Okay, testing.
Testing. Can you hear me?
We can hear you beautifully. Yes.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Okay, so today we are talking about, are you willing to be desired? And wow, just asking the question, are you willing to be desired, brings up quite a bit of stuff in most people's universe. And I have to say, this question, even for when I was playing with it, when you sent a list of possible things to play with, and that one just like popped, and I thought, wow. And I know that desire is kind of really up in the world right now for a lot of people. So what if, I know a lot of people desire you, Cory. And so what is it like for you, first of all, being desired? What was your process of this with desire?
The desire. Yeah. Well, where do I start, really?
Right.
Interesting, because I was looking at it this morning. I'm like, all right, well, what are we going to talk about today? I wonder. Because we could go in so many different directions, but I think that one of the places to start with me where, people meet me now or have met me in the last couple of years, and they think I'm they have this idea of who I am, right? Yeah. They can see whatever they see, they perceive whatever they perceive about me. But the people who have known me for 20 or 30 years can see, well, or even like 7 or 8 years, can see the total difference in who I'm being now versus who I was, in my teen years, but also in my 20s. Because, I was really shy. I was very guarded. I was extraordinarily insecure. I hated my body. I didn't think I was pretty. I separated myself, and come to find out now, that's what I was doing, where I was, I thought everybody else was better than me. Right. And I would always judge myself against, especially other women, but also men. I would have this judgment system in my head that if a guy was, X good looking or X successful, then he was out of my league. So I wouldn't even pay attention to them there. And then the lower on my scale, they were out. So there was this like narrow little,
like a
pinhole of men, for example, that I would be potentially even open to talking to. And I come to find out, it was a way that I separated myself. I would put up barriers. So it wasn't necessarily about anybody else. It was all about me. And if we put it to this context here of being willing to be desired, like, I wasn't willing to be seen. I wasn't willing to be desired. I wasn't willing to be wanted. I wasn't willing to be had, especially by anybody I judged as better than me, right? Or less than me, because I was just like a judgment creating machine back then. So
I've been in that club.
Right? It's true. Like, people meet me now, they're like, I can't even imagine you like that. Well, that's how much I've changed using the access tools. Like, yeah. I'm a completely different person now. I function differently. But with this desire thing, when, like, one of the big turning points for me was, I've always had sort of a more voluptuous body, right? And one of the things I just decided, I chose it basically, but there was a moment, this was way before access, where I was like, if I never be skinny, like if I never lose all this weight, then what? If I'm just, in my world at the time, if I'm just fat for the rest of my life, then what? And I had this like epiphany of like, well, and this was in the context of sex, bedroom, relationship. Right. It's like, find all the men that you possibly can that love your body just the way it is.
Wow.
And I don't know how I came up with that. That's just what was there for me, because I just in the moment sort of was so frustrated with making myself wrong for the way my body was and trying to fix it and nothing was working, right? Because I created it as a problem and going, fuck it. There's, you know, what one of the biggest industries in porn is people like over 500 pounds. There's like a whole niche for that.
Yeah.
Right. And I was definitely not that. I mean, my body's not that size, but I was like, if there's like desire for people who are 500 pounds and I'm X amount overweight in judgment standards, what am I doing to myself? Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I literally saw the ridiculousness of it. And what started happening was, I mean, I was already sort of desired, but it was all in this judgment box. But after that, all of a sudden, like, guys would be like, I love your body. I love your curves. I love the way your breasts look. I love like they started like loving it and like desiring me and my body that was totally contradictory to all my judgments of I needed to be thin or I needed to be fit or I needed to have less of a poochy tummy or whatever.
Yeah. So what did that create? Like, because did you ever have any of that, well, if you desire me, there must be something wrong with you phase?
I didn't, because I asked for it. Like,
Okay.
I was cognitively, I think maybe before that there was some of that, but after I was like, if I'm fat for the rest of my life, there's no way I'm going without sex. There's no way I'm going to be like, I'm not going to date. Like, that was like like, what am I doing? Like, this is ridiculous. So after that, I knew that it was a choice for myself, right? So it was the choice to actually let down whatever barrier it was that was separating me from anybody who could desire me or desire my body, right? My body was big in the desire piece. That was where I used to really validate my story that I wasn't desirable. Right? Because there's all these other people that are so much more beautiful and smarter and have more money and they can wear high heels and they do their makeup and their nails and like I had all these silly points of view. But all it was separating me. That's all I was doing. I was separating myself based on my judgments. It didn't have anything to do with anybody else.
Yeah, and I'm kind of giggling because we're sitting here and we're looking at you today and I'm seeing beautiful you, goddess, voluptuous, gorgeous creator here, and it's kind of funny to hear that we would have those points of view when it's like it just doesn't match, the energy that's showing up right now, and so it's so easy for us to do that. Like we're there so quickly without even really catching ourselves a lot of times.
Oh yeah.
All the reasons you can't, you shouldn't, you won't, you must not, and if you do, all those reasons must be something dirty, nasty, or scary.
Yeah.
And so it sets up some insanity in a lot of our universes.
Yes, right. A little bit.
What is desire? I did, I love to go to etymology online. And so I went and looked up desire, and we're talking about like the energy that went into the creation of the words, the way the words were originally used. And I thought it was interesting. Desire as a noun, it actually speaks to it's a 13th century Old French, which I don't know if I'll mutilate it if I try to say it. So it's the sense of lust, is the first recorded in the mid 14th century. As a verb, it's to wish, desire, long for, to demand, to expect. And in the original sense, perhaps it meant to await what the stars will bring. I kind of thought that was a little Shakespearean. And then a lot of people, I think of lust synonymously with desire. So I looked up lust, and as a verb, it's from the 12th century, to wish, to desire, to have a strong sexual desire for one or after. And let's see, it's first attested in the 1520s in the biblical use. So as a noun, lust is listed as desire, appetite, pleasure, sensuous appetite. And then from all these different origins, it deals a lot with pleasure and desire. So it's interesting, the energy is kind of involved in that word as we play with that. And I wonder how many people have made it something that we kind of want, but we just don't want anybody to say it out loud because it's supposed to mean all these things that we're not supposed to want. And yet we're here in bodies. And so when we're talking about sex, if we're including all of those energies, did you have any, what did you notice when you started to be willing to actually receive the desire?
Well, there were certain people I was receiving it from that I was like, yay.
Right.
And then others where I was like, oh, I'm not quite sure about this, right? Because what started to happen is like, I remember right after I did that, there was a guy at a gas station, and he was like, hi. He's like, here's my number. Will you call me? It was so creepy to me because I wasn't normally approached, right? And I did have a number of people, you know, over the years do quite interesting things. Like their behavior was interesting and then I realized that, I mean, I say interesting and I want to say inappropriate, right? Like I met a guy at a coffee shop and I was like, oh, you're cute and you seem smart, you're doing cool stuff in the world. And then he calls me and he like within 10 minutes, he's wanting to have sex talk, phone sex or whatever. And I was like, wait a second. Like, how did you get there? How did that happen? I'm not quite sure. So I think that what I've seen is that there's some people just don't know what to do with the energy.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean anything about me.
I
open the door, and then some people like trip and fall on their face, right? Like that guy, whether he was doing it because he, you know, thought it was okay, or he just didn't know what else to do and he was caught up in the energy. Then I find that a lot of men with me will, they don't know what to do with energy, so they go straight to that. Now, I have a choice, right? I can either stop that, cut it off, create some barriers, or I can actually learn to be with it. So what it's really enabled me to do is be more and more and more clear about my communication, more and more clear about like any boundaries. And I don't know what else to call them, Keisha. I know like in Access, we don't really call them boundaries that much, but it's a boundary. Like, no, you don't call me and do that. Like that's not okay, right? Like, and what's really cool is it's created this sort of you know, you talk about the goddess energy, like a queen energy. Yeah. Like you wouldn't do that to a queen, like a real queen, not just a you know, me as a queen, but like a real queen. There's certain things you wouldn't do, right? Yeah. So I've been cultivating that energy too, of like being willing to receive the desire. Not ever feeling like I have to do anything or that I'm, you know, manipulated into doing anything. And it's really helped. I mean, it's really been such a contribution to me of having my yes and having my no. Yeah. And being super clear, because if you're not clear and you're wishy-washy, you will get all sorts of stuff showing up that's maybe not what you want.
Thank you for saying that.
I see it, at least in my experience, as a function of where you're at. If you're wishy-washy, or if you're like doing some funny judgment thing with yourself, that's what's gonna actually come through, because you're allowing it, right? And not to say that people don't do weird things, because they still will anyway, but it's easier to navigate the more clear you are.
So let's play with having clarity about, do you see in your work, because I know you work with quite a few people, and over the last few years you have worked with quite a few people, what did you see with people having a sense of what their own desire was? Was there any kind of correlation? Did you notice or observe? Like if people were willing to have their own desire, sexually and like what they desired to create in their life. And for you, was there a correlation for you as well, as you were able to get to the place of being willing to receive the desire?
Yeah, well, totally. Because then there's the space of not judging it and being willing to have it show up, whatever you ask for, show up for sure.
Hmm.
Because I see a lot like, and I did this too, right? But now that I'm seeing it because I've changed it, I see it a lot more in other people, right? Of their like even if you're asking for money, right? Or I see people asking a lot of times for money in relationships. Right. So you're asking for, some sort of relationship, right? But then there's all these points of view or judgments or separations,
Yeah.
right? Or projections on how it should be. So you're actually not willing to receive what you're asking for. There's an incongruency there.
Yeah.
You've created a conflictual reality. Well, I'm asking for this, but what I'm really willing to receive is this over here, which are two different things, right? They can't, usually those two things don't can't happen at the same time. They're conflictual. So that, and I mean, for the last year specifically, I've really been working with Ask and You Shall Receive and facilitating people to have, their asks be congruent with what they're asking for so that you can actually receive it, because you won't receive it if you're not congruent. And it might be this far away. It might be like on the outskirts, right? But you won't receive it unless you're actually congruent with receiving it. So, I kind of went off a little tangent there. I'm trying to remember, where was I going with all of that?
The correlation of willing to have your desire
Oh, that's right.
along with being willing to receive it,
That's
from
right.
others.
Right. So that congruency is super helpful to actually receiving it. But like really looking at, I mean, and this is like, I want to say it's basic, access consciousness stuff, is like, is it even yours? Is your desire even yours? Right? Because everybody says, oh, I want a relationship. Well, is that even yours? And if you don't have something, you're not congruent with having it, or you're asking for something that you actually don't want.
I love that.
It's as simple as that. There's something in your world that's not congruent, or having a conflict, right? And that's the only reason it can't show up, because it's super easy. Like, I'd like to have a latte, and then boom, you have a latte, right?
I've been able to obtain a hot water heater with ease and a car with ease, and then there's other things I'm like, all right, I'm obviously, there's something else, there's another question, there's something, an awareness,
Yeah.
So
Or
it is.
timing. There's also timing, right? As we know,
Yeah.
like, it's not always the right timing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so even with the desire, like, they're almost identical, right? With business and money and sex and relationships, right? Is we want it how we want it, but how we want it is not always how it's actually going to show up.
Yeah.
So then we refuse, we block it out of our universe, or refuse it the way it shows up, when a lot of times it's showing up in a greater way than we even asked for, right? But because it didn't show up in the way we wanted it to, either we can't see it, we refuse it, we make it wrong, separate ourselves, do all that kind of weird stuff with it, right?
Yeah. The word appropriate's kind of coming up. So let's talk a little bit about appropriate. And is appropriate the same for every person?
Say more about that. What do you mean about appropriate?
Earlier you were talking about kind of it the way it landed was, you were getting clear for you, like what really worked for you, what didn't really work for you, what you were willing to be with other people. And when it comes to behavior, I think something that comes up for a lot of people when we're talking about being desired, and I know for me, actually, this was part of it, and it still kind of comes up from time to time, depending on who I'm meeting, when somebody's doing something like this guy who was kind of just, he really was just sending lots of energy, in that moment. When things feel inappropriate or inappropriate versus appropriate, do you find for you, did you kind of go through, okay, this is what works for me, and did you get a sense of what was appropriate for you, or did you have weirdness about what you knew worked for you, but maybe didn't match the definition of what appropriate behavior was?
Oh my God, this is great. Okay, so I've been through different phases of this.
Okay.
Where in the beginning, I think that I would just go with whatever was showing up, and it was letting that other person lead. So in the beginning, I would allow, I say the beginning, whenever that was, I have no idea, a long time ago. I would let them lead. So then if they were being weird, then I would a lot of times just make it okay, because I never wanted to make really anybody else wrong, especially outwardly. And I felt like if I stood my ground and said, oh, I would like to not have sex with you, then that would make them feel bad, right? And so I had this weird thing about, me actually choosing for me. And then it sort of evolved into judgment of like, who do you think you are? Like, do you really think that that's appropriate?
Yeah.
Right? And then it has evolved recently into, what's actually possible here?
Awesome. Yeah.
Not going off of their lead, but really being in the question of, And I noticed, and there was a moment where somebody was, because online dating, like I'm not even online, I'm app dating now. You got these freaking apps on your phone and everything's fast, super fast, right? Yeah. And there's this whole new energy and culture to the fastness of the, and then there's fast, and then there's guys that are, taking their time. And I really appreciate those guys, really. I really do. The guys that are taking their time, it's really nice. Yeah. And then sometimes there's just a natural energy or chemistry or whatever with somebody where you're like, yeah, let's meet. Let's, and it's light and expansive at the same time. Mm-hmm. So when I was judging, and this was just recently I saw this, I was like, God, they all just want to start talking about sex. They all want to start exchanging pictures, and I started judging it God, where are all the good guys? And I was like, wow, well, isn't that a nice story? Oh. What am I asking for? Or what energy am I being that this is actually showing up?
Yeah.
So I switched it. I destroyed and uncreated whatever all that stuff was. I can't even remember. And I was like, okay, what would it take for high quality guys that I would just really enjoy? That I'm interested in. They've got stuff going on in their lives. They're, whatever they are, just in the more is the energy than anything else. I want to feel excited and enthusiastic about, seeing somebody.
Some
whatever
chemistry.
That is. Right? So, and then one of the guys, he started going sexual, right? Because they do that with me a lot. And I find that they a lot of times they'll go sexual with me because I've got my barriers down, because I'm open, and because I'm actually not going to outwardly judge them and be like, oh, gross, why did you do that? No, I'm not going to do that. And whatever all that is. So there's in their world, there's an energetic opening for that. So I can take responsibility for that, right? It's not their fault necessarily, right? Now they could be more aware, but I can always see their agenda, right? So when I have my barriers down, I get to see what their true agenda is. Now, is that a benefit to me? Yeah, it's a total benefit to me, right? Now, it doesn't work with everybody, but a lot of times I can see that. Now, what I did with it this one time recently, is I was like, he did the thing, he started going, sexual or whatever pretty quickly. You see how big this phone is? That's how many chats there were before he went there, right? It was not very many. First I was annoyed. And then I was like, wait a second. Here. I was like, would it be fun to play with this? And I got a light on that. So I was like, I'm going to change this right now. Because that's what I've really been working with the last couple of years is stop, change.
Nice.
Stop the judgment, the point of view, the resistance, the reaction, the projection, the expectation, the separation. Stop. Mm-hmm. What else can I choose right now? And I was like, ooh, can I play with this? And I can't remember exact details, but I changed it in a way where all of a sudden, instead of doing the I'm hungry sexual energy, I want you, it was he literally opened up. And there was a really cool connection after that. And I can't remember what I did or what I said, but I remember just like flipping it. And I was like, if I'm magic, right? And if I actually am aware, and if I can actually ask a question or choose something different or manipulate the energy to go in a different direction, what could actually be possible here?
Yeah.
So I flipped it, and then it was like enjoyable. But here's the thing: I didn't allow, not allow like stop this. I wasn't like demanding. I didn't have to put, barriers up. I didn't have to make him wrong. I just went, hey, is there another possibility available, and how can I spin this?
Yeah.
Right. And it was really cool because I was like, oh wow, I'm a lot more powerful than I thought.
And I wonder, that's really a key piece. It's like, I wonder how many people are really willing to acknowledge that is possible, that is really true for them. That they're more potent, they're more powerful than they've been willing to acknowledge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when we're in this resistance, reaction, points of view, separation, judgment, self-fulfilling prophecy stories, right? Like, see, there's no guys out there. See, they're all this way. See, none of them like me, whatever your thing is, right?
Yeah.
Then you're just going to keep getting that over there. But I was like, okay, so I do this in business all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So why can't I do it in my relationship realm?
Yeah.
And then it keeps the energy of desire going, right? And the willingness to be desired. But now I have a sense of, it's control, but it's like the manipulation of the energy versus, I can hear people going, no, like that's not okay. Like the judgment, like the
and really
refusing, but the reprimand.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's
they have to correct. Yeah, it's like a correction too.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and my parents were a little bit like that because my dad wouldn't do something and then my mom would be like, rah, 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 like, and then you see relationships and then the guys are like, happy life, happy wife, happy life, right? Well, there's actually kind of a good thing about that, but it's usually like about keeping her not upset.
Yeah.
Versus actually keeping her happy.
Yeah.
Right? So it's an interesting energy to play with. And if you're willing to stop and choose something different, then you can literally change anything in your life or the energy, or you can actually see what's going on versus going into all the story about it.
Yes. And you get to choose, like keeping yourself in the choosing seat, so to speak.
Exactly. Being the chooser. And I love, like, Blossom Benedict was talking about that recently.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I was so, functioning from being chosen. Like, will they choose me? Will they choose me? Like, especially in relationship stuff.
Mm-hmm. And
when she said that, I was like, wow, I have not been willing to be the chooser. So now I'm like, no, I'm the chooser here. And it changes.
Yeah.
It changes the energy when you're the one that's, and I always get like the queen energy, right? Like the queen is always the chooser.
Yeah.
And then you're never at the effect. You're never the victim. You're always have your awareness out, or at least you can choose that. If you're being the queen is always aware, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. if she's a potent, capable leader, let's say, of her own life, yes.
the full energy of queen, right?
So, and really, like, I was just getting a different sense too of, like, it allows you to respond rather than react.
Yeah.
If you're waiting to be chosen, or if you're waiting to follow someone's lead, and not from the space of gratitude and being space with them or just being present with them, but more of like, well, I have to kind of go by their cue sort of a way, you're actually in reaction.
Yeah.
And
then it's also like, who are you being, right? Like, who are you being in that reaction? Well, I found out I was being my mother. Go figure. And that was not working for me very well. Like, I was not getting what I really wanted.
Right.
But I was definitely getting what my mom got.
Interesting, isn't it?
which we are so different. But that mimicry, right, is so easy. Like that's just the way relationships are. Is this is you judge people, you reprimand them. They need to do what you want, otherwise you're not happy. And when you're working with the energy of being desired, like it's going to come in so many different ways that people desire you. And especially I say especially, whether it's in business and relationship, like even with business, like people sometimes they just want to be my friend, right? They're bummed because my friends list is full on Facebook, right? They're like, oh, right. And they just want to be close to you. They want what you have.
Yeah.
There's kind of some people who want, like, they get the energy of who you be, and they're like, I want that for myself. And then there's other people who are like, they want you, right? Like a sucker.
Yeah.
They want you to themselves, and you can tell the difference.
Yeah.
And that's another place I've gotten really, really good. And I got really good at this. Okay. Want to know a business thing? Like being willing to be desired. So my last business, I was definitely willing to be desired because I ended up with this huge network in Denver, and everybody wanted to have coffee with me. Now I was doing it in a very not contributory way for me, because I was being of service and I was giving everybody everything all the time. And I was not receiving, and my life was pretty much crap, which led me to Access. But I was giving. So everybody wanted to know me. They wanted to have coffee dates with me. They wanted me to go to their events. They wanted me to promote. They wanted me to everything. I was their everything, right? They wanted, but they weren't ever giving anything back.
Yeah.
So that was me, not willing to receive, but also not willing to act and I didn't know these tools back then, but I wasn't asking any questions. And the first question I started asking was, well, what's in this for me? Mm-hmm. That was the hardest question for me to ask, because I felt like I sounded like such an a-hole, because I was like, well, what's in it for me? Because what's in it for me? But it's like, no, really, like what's actually in it for me here? What do I get to receive from this? And I asked it for everything. Every business thing to every date, I used it everywhere, so I could actually start including myself, right? And when I moved to California, I declared, I was like, I am not going to be the networking girl. I'm not going to be your coffee date. I'm not going to sell my soul for everyone else anymore. I'm freaking a potent facilitator. I'm a global international. I have clients all around the world. I freaking will change your world, and I know it, and that's who I'm going to be. So from that space, if I'm being that, then if somebody asks me for coffee, then how do I respond?
Exactly.
If somebody asks me to, pick their brain or whatever, how do I respond? But not how do I respond like a blanket, but what question do I be?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what question do I be? Maybe it is a contribution to go to coffee with somebody.
Yeah.
But not fill up my whole week with coffees with people that just want to take from me. But because I set that different energy of like, yes, I am desired, and knowing where, what is actually, not knowing from conclusion, but being willing to be in the question of that.
Yeah, your awareness.
Hardly anybody asks me to coffee anymore. It's great.
I love that. This really kind of brings us to a part of the question that, the question that came up on when I created the image this week is, what have you decided being desired requires you to choose? And it brings up that energy of kind of, you touched on this a little earlier too, of we don't really learn what to do with desire. We don't really learn how to be with that energy. And it can be so intense, because desire is like, for me, desire is it's just one of those wonderful parts of sex. And sex, I'm saying sex in reference to the whole application of it, not specifically like, in the dark or something you do with your bodies, including that. And when you're at the coffee shop, when you're in that business meeting, and the desire energy shows itself or gets, starts to bubble a bit. We don't learn how to be with that. And so what is a tool that you play with that allows you to be creating what you're creating now with being present and in the willingness to receive desire?
Oh, you know, I think one of my favorite tools, and I think you know this one, Keisha.
I might.
You might. Well, there's a couple of things before it. So barriers down, right? Like my barriers down, and willing to be vulnerable and willing to be seen, right? Because they can't, like, people in your business and life and in sex and all, like what you're talking about, your sexual energy, what you're alluding to is this: sex is, like, I love how Gary Douglas says it. He's like, it's like the looking good, feeling good. You're radiating you. You walk down, like, if you ever notice somebody walking down the street, you're like, whoa, that person is turned on.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with sex. They're just turned on. They're lit up. They're radiating them, right? So that's barriers down. That's, you know, being in your, you know, willing to be seen, willing to be vulnerable. And, you know, so many of us have all these barriers to that. But my favorite tool for that is, God, and I learned this when I first started Access like 6 years ago, is, yes, I'll have sex with you. Thank you for being. That's exchange energy right there, right? So I barriers down. Yeah. And then, like, if I'm at a coffee shop or I'm on Facebook or I'm doing a talk or a speaking gig or a class or whatever, barriers down. And then energetically, or in my head, I say, yes, I'll have sex with you. Thank you for being. Yeah. Yes, I'll have sex with you. Thank you for being. Now, you can say it out loud, but I'm not responsible for any results that happen. But what happens is, I mean, I do this actually in all of my foundation classes. That's one of the first homeworks they do, because I want them to start playing with the energy and noticing where your natural judgments are that you didn't even know. Because a lot of times we're like, well, I'm not judgmental. Yeah, you are. Go into a coffee shop or a grocery store and pick out all the people that you would actually have sex with, like go to bed with. Mm-hmm. Probably not very many. Why? Because you're judging the crap out of everybody and yourself. Yeah. So this is what I did, is anybody that was, okay, so first of all, you know, anybody under 18, but was really like under 25, they're out. Yeah. And I'm talking women are out. Anybody under 25 is out. Anybody older than, like when I first started this, older than like 50 or 55 was out, right? Anybody shorter than me, out. Anybody stinky, out. No teeth, out. Bald, out. Right? Like I had all these things, right? I mean, right. Oh, anybody too good looking, out.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that was one of my things. Nice job, Cory. Like, so out. So you walk through a place and there's not going to be very many because you're judging everybody. And when you have a judgment, you have a barrier. Yeah. Right? And so when you let down your barriers and you actually energetically say this to people, that, you know, number one thing that typically will happen for people is they go, oh my God, I could do it to this person, but I couldn't say it to this person. Because they're like, you start to see where you're separating yourself and where you're judging yourself or them or whatever. Yeah. And then, but when you just let your barriers down, I did it, God, one of the first times I did it to a homeless man. It was dirty, stinky, shorter than me, old, like really dirty.
All those things you previously judged, not acceptable.
All those things, and I did it, and you know what happened? He freaking bought my coffee.
Oh my gosh, Cory.
Yeah, wow. He bought my coffee. He was so grateful that I was being with him with no barriers. Now, he didn't say that, but that's what it was. And I was like, wow, how could me, in my world, be running around with no barriers actually contribute to people? I noticed that I get more eye contact. People do nice things for me. Like, the weirdest stuff will show up. Like, my reality is so different than it is. And sometimes I walk around with my barriers up. It's not like I do it all the time. Like, if I go into, for some crazy reason, like a Walmart, I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm in to get whatever it is I'm in to get, and I'm out. And I'm pissed off because I have to go into a Walmart. Right? There's some things only Walmart has, it seems, or the Walmart is the closest thing or whatever.
I have interesting points of view about Walmart.
Me too, apparently. All my judgments are not gone, or we're just super aware about Walmart. People of Walmart, right? But anyway, like, it's interesting to see how generous people are and how it changes the energy of wherever you are if you're being in that space of receiving. Now, one thing I want to explain too is the yes, I'll have sex with you means yes, I will receive you.
Yes, I was gonna.
Yeah, yes, I want to make sure of that because it's a little confusing if you've never heard this before. Yes, I will receive you. Thank you for being. You're actually acknowledging their being, not their stories, not their judgments, and you're actually saying, thank you for being here in a body right now. And it's so juicy, the energy. Like, just watch. Like, see. So 2 things. Notice who you're willing to do it to and who you're willing not to.
Yeah.
And then notice when you are willing to do it, what shows up.
Wow.
They will desire you, but it's a space, it's a different space.
Yeah.
It's not like a clamoring.
I wonder well, I mean, I have an awareness about this, but I'm curious what your awareness is. It's like, desire has not always been about copulation. And yet, it seemed to have gotten sort of narrowly defined or related to, it has to be about something physical. And yet, like what you were just saying, when you be in that moment and allow yourself to let your barriers down and really choose to be present and receive that person or those people or that experience, there is something, it's an energy that we can't really name, I don't think, because it's so, there's a generativeness to it. There's an expansiveness to it. It's like a life-giving kind of energy. We could choose to take it into a copulate, something to do with copulation, but we're not obligated to choose that. And yet I see a lot of people, like, this is part of what I think creates that difficulty of being present with desire and knowing, like, how do I behave here? And what I'd like, we're in our last little bit here, but you've brought this into your business. You've brought this into your relationships. You've brought this into, you're bringing it into this conversation now. And that's one of the things I just so love about getting to play with you and watching what you're creating in the world is you are being an example of this, an illustration of this, and an invitation to this. So I just want to acknowledge that first, acknowledging that, and thank you for that. And what did you notice? Your body, your life, your living, your businesses, your bank accounts. What did you notice? Because I would love for people to have an idea of what else can this create? If they want to choose copulation, awesome. And if it's, if you're with a group of senior women, you don't necessarily want to go to bed with, what else is possible, right?
Yeah, what else is possible? Well, it's interesting, like you said, the business, the bank account, all of it, the acknowledgement. People actually see you and they're so grateful for that. And so for my classes, a lot of times, like I said before, people are like, I want what you have, that energy that you're being, I want that for me. And so that level of desire is so freaking cool when you are willing to be desired for who you're being or what you're being. Right? And that's so different and not really acknowledged. That's the unacknowledged part is, I know that now one thing I get to show people is that being, right? Just totally different. It's not about the how-tos. It's not about fixing yourself. It's not about any of that. It's about your being. And the more, it seems to me, everything just expands when you're willing to be desired and willing to be in choice at the same time, never feeling obligated, like you said. Because that's where I was functioning, like I said before, is like obligated to do something, obligated to give back, obligated to manage their desire. And that never works. Man, that's a lot of work. Yeah. So it's like, cool, great. Like, this is, you would like a session. Lots of people call, like, they'll be like, I need a session from you today. And every now and then that works. Like, I'm like, yeah, I actually do have a free hour. Totally happy to do that. That's light. And then other times it's like, no, like, here's my schedule. And then I let them choose.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. What works for them. But it really, like, I think it seems to me that when you are willing to be desired from that space of expansion, and you're asking for it because you know that there's a contribution that you be that's unique in the world.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's this like juicy space where it's like, whew, right. And then that's where it affects your bank account. That's where it affects your creation. That's where it affects your choices. That's where you're just functioning from a different space of, yeah, I'm totally willing to be desired. Because there's a couple years ago, I wasn't willing to be celebrated. And Gary Douglas said, you know, he's like, well, you're not willing to be celebrated, Cory. And I was like, because I was doing this amazing work with people, but I wasn't getting any testimonials. Like, nobody would write me a testimonial. I was like, what is that? Like, their whole life just changed. Why won't they write me something like that I contributed to that?
Yeah.
And it was like willing to be celebrated, which is desired and celebrated as sort of the little sister energies, right? Mm-hmm. Of like, when you're willing to be desired and celebrated at the same time, it's less needy energy of take, but it's more of like, I'm going to have that. I'll have that too, energy from people. Yeah. So when I switched that, now I get freaking acknowledgement all the time. It's a little overwhelming sometimes. So I'm like, wow, this is like, thank you. And okay, let's keep going, right? Like, how does it get better? And so grateful.
Wow.
So grateful. So grateful for all these tools and all these conversations.
Yes. And for anyone who has heard us, we're mentioning Access Consciousness quite a bit, and Gary Douglas, who is the founder of Access Consciousness, a fantastic set of tools and just amazing things that have occurred for both Cory and I in using the tools, living the tools, and just enjoying the benefits of what that creates, the joy of what that creates. You can actually go to accessconsciousness.com. Great deal of information there, and as well as a lot of free videos, recordings, things that you can actually just kind of get acquainted if you aren't already acquainted with Access Consciousness. And Cory is also a certified Access Consciousness facilitator, and that is a part of how she has created an amazing life and business these last few years. So, wow. So it's kind of like being willing to receive what your choice to be desired creates is a part of this that allows you to receive whatever contribution that could be. And that was going to be my next thing. I was curious. It's like, and of course that's shifting now. So let's see what else wants to be asked. So what do you desire when you see someone, or when you get a whiff of some project or possibility that just like your body and your being just kind of go, yes, you know, what do you notice goes on for you in that part of it?
Yeah. You know, what's interesting is I started looking at that, a couple of years ago about this desire thing. And there's, I switched it. I flipped this around where I kind of thought desire came from was like, right, like a point of view. When I think of points of view, they come from my head. Mm-hmm. I have a point of view. I want this. I desire this. Right? I want this. And what I realized is that that's just a point of view. Most of the time, my points of view aren't even mine.
Yeah.
So I was like, wait a second. So what is desire for me really anyway? And it's all energy-based now. So even if you ask me to make a list of all the things I'd like to have, it's very hard for me because I'm like, I ask for the lightness of an expanded reality, and I ask for energies, right? I'm always asking for energies to show up. So the desire is the lighter always of all possible energies at any moment. Now, do I always choose that? No, but every day I get better and better and better at like navigating those energies and continue to choose lighter and lighter. Now, that keeps me out of my head. That keeps me out of these stinking points of view. That keeps me out of creating other people's realities. And it really, like, when I go, ooh, like Keisha's like, ooh, she looks really sexy today. And that energy, like, I'll have that. I do a lot of I'll have that.
Yeah.
And when I say that, now I'll take it, because that's a take.
Different.
I'll have that means I'll have that energy too. And if I go, ooh, I'll have that, and then I bring it in and I let my body feel it, right? I'm like, yeah, I'll have that. And then I move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's like, like I'll see a picture of like Fiji. Fiji's like on my mind, like, oh, I'll have that. And then in a moment, like, I'm like, body, what would it be like to have that? Like to be on that little tropical thingy, whatever.
I love that.
And then my body goes, yeah, like that. I'm like, okay, good, I'll have that.
Wow.
It's like, I'll have that, I'll have that, I'll have that. And then freaking the shit that shows up when I do that. So that's my desire now, is that energetic. My points of view don't matter. My points of view are erroneous and silly.
Yeah.
Don't mean anything.
There's something about that also, like, the way that landed for me was kind of like, there's like a whole different way that you actually can receive the contribution of both what you're desiring, you know, whatever, when that energy shows up, that you go, I'll have that. It's like you're receiving something, and then there's also this acknowledgement that I'm getting that you're being and that you're offering to that, whatever that is. And it's like this really cool, mutually beneficial, mutually generative, like a win-win kind of thing. That's really cool too. I never caught that like that before. So
well,
awesome.
When we desire stuff that's not like light, because it's a point of view, like, oh, like if I said right now, like, I desire a relationship that's kind of like everybody else's, that's just not light for me. So if I start asking for that, it's not going to show up because I'm not congruent with it. Plus, my body's not lit up about it. You're either going to create crap, right, or nothing.
There's that incongruency. Yeah.
It's the incongruency, right? So when I'm like looking for, paying attention, being aware of the sort of those zingers, ooh, I'll have that, ooh, I'll have that, ooh, I'll have that. I like did that with a picture of Bali a few years ago. I don't even know if I knew it was in Bali. I might have. I ended up at that exact same retreat center that I was like, I'll have that. And I posted it on my Facebook page, and I was like, hey, who wants to come swimming here with me?
Wow.
It was like a year later, I was at that pool swimming. And I didn't even know until I took pictures of the pool, came home, and I looked at it, and I was like, oh my God, that was that same place.
Wow.
You're those zingers, I'm just going to start calling them zingers.
I like that.
Literally will actualize, and your body will, like, we could have a whole other show on that, but I'll have it. I'll have it is my phrase. I walk around all day saying, I'll have that. I'll have that.
Yeah. Wow. And you are welcome to come back anytime, and we can have lots more juicy conversations, because I love talking about sex and all things related to it. And so, wow. So if we were, gosh, there are just so many things here. Yes, we're in our last couple of minutes. Would you actually first just let people know how they can find out more about you, play more with you, and see what you have, possibilities for play you have on the docket?
Yes, so I have 3 things. Crazy Possible Experiment, you definitely want to get in that. That's like the hot place. Plus, we're launching year 2 coming up here soon. We got a really cool stuff coming up. 2, my website is meetcorymichelle.com. So if you want to just find out what events I'm doing next or whatever, you can get on the email list, which is at the top. And then I guess the hit I'm getting, the free thing, if you'd like a goodie from me, is I do these clearing loops. And the one that's currently available for free is Clearing Blocks to Ask and You Shall Receive. So, yeah. And that one is crazypossibleliving.com /like-Cory, C-O-R-Y.
Wow.
So crazypossibleliving.com /like-Cory. Yeah, and that one's awesome. So you download it and then just listen to it. People have been listening to it for like 30 days, and it's all clearing work based on like everywhere that you haven't been willing to ask, right? Because so much of the time we're not even willing to ask the question that would actually give us the thing that we'd like to have, right?
That we truly desire.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, folks. So I think the big one for me this week is going to play more with your question and the barriers down. Yes, I will have sex with you, and thank you for being. I love that, and I actually heard that I one of the first access related conversations I heard was you having a conversation that you actually shared that tool. And that was one of the first things that just so resonated with me. It was like the way my system naturally works.
Yeah.
And so it landed. And that is a part of what went into creating what we're sitting here doing today. So thank you for being a part of that, and a part of what is bringing me so immensely joyful experiences that I can't even explain it in human words. And thank you for what you're creating in the world, for the invitation you're being. And folks, if you've not played with Cory, please find one of those ways to play. And if you're watching this as a replay, we will have the links listed in the description below this video. So just scroll down and click on the one that waves at you, or you can, click on all of them and play with Cory and be a unicorn and play in your magic and be willing to be desired. And I wonder what that would create in your life, in your body, in your businesses, in your relationships, in your bank accounts. Wow, in the world. What if desire is not an obligation? What if it's actually a possibility for something more? Mm-hmm. And Cory, do you have any words you'd like to leave the folks with?
Oh my goodness. Yes, I'll have sex with all of you. Thank you for being. Let me know how that goes. Like, you can ping me or whatever.
Yeah.
For everybody listening and everything, you too, but for everybody listening, what?
Definitely.
What I love knowing what shows up, because it's everything from cars getting out of your way to getting free stuff to clients showing up to just feeling really juicy. If you do it during sex, actual copulation,
don't try that.
Definitely don't do that. You don't want to
do that.
But Keisha, thank you so much for opening up this conversation and for creating this space for people to actually engage with this conversation in a whole different way. It's such a gift. So thank you for that. And thank you, Rhonda, who's not here.
Yes, our beautiful sister, Rhonda. And she will be back with me next week. I think we might be coming up on a little milestone, so stay tuned. We will put the word out. And again, you're invited to get yourself on the guest list, and you'll just know about these things a little bit early. And wow, what fun can you have playing with the willingness to be desired this week? And do let us know what goes on, what that creates, what shows up, who shows up, might be fun.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, may you have so much joy celebrating all things sex and the sex of everything. And we will see you next week for another unconventional conversation to unfuck your life here on Sexually Speaking. In the meantime, have a great week, folks.
Bye.
Bye.